my lovers, how's it going? I went out to Carkeek Park a few weeks back, and I'm making a video on that for y'all just because I had a crash, and luckily I didn't damage my bike, but you know, I did get into some issues that had to be fixed. Now, luckily, if you've seen any of my videos, I ride with Uncle Dan, and Uncle Dan's son, cousin Nick, he was quite a bike rider in his day. He still rides, and he gets out there and he does a little bit of riding, but he's not as prolific as he used to be. He kind of tends to be more into golf lately. And so, but he's worked as a bike mechanic, and he's a really good bike mechanic. He helped put together my Triton, my Poseidon Triton. I took it over to their house. I have a Fazari gravel bike that I like riding, and initially it came with a 2x10 GRX, and I did not love the 2x10 GRX. Now, I set that bike up myself, which is why I said in the future I'm probably going to have someone else set up my bikes, just because what had happened is I set it up, but I could never stop the chain rub, and I can't live with chain rub. It's just one of those things that when it happens, I can't do it. I can't ignore it. And so I literally took that Fazari into the shop about 5 times, maybe more. And they could never fix the chain rub. Either they could get rid of the rub, but then it wouldn't shift between the two cogs very well. And so it being a gravel bike, you know, and the more research I did and the more that I rode my Poseidon X, which is a 1x, I was like, you know, over time I'm just going to convert this to a 1x. And so I ended up doing that. Now, I wanted to do a 1x, but I also wanted to run an 1150. Now, the GRX 2x, at one point I had a 1142 at the back, so it did have a pretty massive range, but it just never shifted that well. It shifted well for here and there, but ultimately it just didn't last that long. So what I did is I got myself a 2x10 crankset, the GRX crankset, knowing that eventually if this system fails, I'm just going to use the crank arms and put a 1x chainring on it, which I ended up doing. Now, one thing I had to do to make it 1150 shifter, because my mechanic at my shop said he's used the GRX and run an 1146, but I was just like, ugh, I just didn't want to rely on it. And also that derailleur just got totally messed up. One thing I didn't realize when riding gravel bikes is like, if you're going off road, that rear derailleur is super vulnerable to getting banged on logs, on rocks. And if you just haven't ridden off road as much, you don't notice that. Like, you got to really pay attention to that rear derailleur to make sure it doesn't get banged around, because that can really F up your drivetrain. So it took me maybe the first few months to even dawn on me that, oh, I'm probably banging my rear derailleur on stuff that I wasn't even aware of, because when you're on the road, you just don't think about it. There's not as many obstacles. So what I ended up doing is I got an L2 G7 rear derailleur. Now, those rear derailleurs, it took me a lot of research, and there's nothing online that specifically says that it'll work with your GRX, but it kind of does. If you research enough, I got it off AliExpress. If you research enough, it says it'll be compatible with the Tiagra 10-speed, which is also compatible with the GRX 10-speed. So I just did the deduction to be like, okay, if it's compatible with the Tiagra 10-speed shifters, then it's going to be compatible with the GRX shifters because they got the same pull ratio. Again, nothing specifically says that online. I just had to sit there, and no one's going to tell you that works. So in my video, I'm telling you it works because I've done it, I've run it, I've had it for a while now. It's awesome. But if you want to run the L2 GR7 will run 1146 by default, but if you want to run a larger cassette at the back, you need one of these, okay? One of these is a Road Link. Now, you can get generic ones of these, and it's no big deal. They'll still work. These ones are about 25 bucks. My mechanic at GRA Cycles in Greenwood, they went and installed this and they put it all together, and they're like, hey, this works surprisingly well. So when I show you this video of all my crashes and this is what got damaged. This thing. You can see it's kind of cracked here. And so I was very fortunate in that cousin Nick had an extra one of these. And actually, I should contact my bike shop to see if I can get this replaced on a warranty, because he gave me his, so I would like to replace his just in case he needs one. But this is what got cracked. I'm going to show you footage of my crash and everything. And my derailleur did get a little bit bent, but that was not the problem because Nick was able to realign the derailleur hanger. My derailleur hanger got bent, not my derailleur. The derailleur was fine, but this road link was the thing that got cracked and made it difficult to shift through its full range. So once we replaced this and straightened out the derailleur hanger, we were all good to go. So I'm going to show you some footage of that and show you a little bit of me going out to Carkeek Park, which is an awesome little gravel ride, short ride. It's always nice to go on little half-hour, 40-minute rides when you don't have a ton of time. So this is one of those. But I ended up messing up my bike. And I took footage of it. And at the time I was going to release a video, but I was super sad. So until I had gotten my bike fully fixed, I didn't really want to make the video. It's really hard for me to make the video of these things and experience the trauma of breaking your bike. So give me a few weeks of separation where I'm like, okay, everything's cool now. I've been riding the bike since. Luckily, my friends, my lovers, carry your multi-tool, because if it was not for the multi-tool, I would not be able to get home. And so it turned an hour walk home into about 15-minute bike ride to get back. I was able to limp enough to get back, but that was one of my issues. See, with the GRX, it's just the one downside of that L2 rear derailleur is the way that the derailleur connects onto with the cable. It's super vulnerable to your I think the clutch is just automatically engaged, so it can be stiff, and then when you take off your back wheel and put it back on, you usually need to just re-hook up your rear derailleur. It's not a big deal, but you kind of need to re-hook up your rear derailleur and then kind of do some micro adjustments to realign the rear cassette. I forget the word I'm looking for. So in the spirit of trying to get my fitness up, I'm just going to go on a shorter ride today, probably like 45 minutes or something like that. Sometimes when you make these goals of like trying to keep riding and stay riding, you think about the old rides you had where you're like, oh, I was out there for 2 hours. I was looking at some of my like old kind of Strava times and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, I was out here for 2 hours or 3 hours. Like, first of all, I just don't have time like that to be out for 3 hours on my bike. One day we'll see. Hopefully we can get back to that time where I can feel free to get back on my bike. But at the same time, when you can feel your fitness slipping a little bit, it just doesn't feel good, and like you get back on your bike and you are more tired than you used to be and everything like that. Also, winter in the Pacific Northwest, although the winters are not super crazy, they can get wet, and cold, rainy 40-degree days are horrible. Like if anyone's ever been in 40-degree days, I'd rather it just be like almost snowing where it's a little bit more dry. So, as you can see, it's kind of a wet day outside. Here we go, off-road. It's nice that there's no one out here. Definitely mess with that. Summertime, this definitely has a lot of people coming. So that's another advantage of winter riding.
But you know, in the Pacific Northwest, people get out in the winter. You know, we just put our jackets on and we go for it. Got the sound behind me. Just a nice way to get out. You know, again, we're not going for a heck of a ride. With the 15 minutes there, probably take me 20 minutes to get back because of the uphills. It's just a nice little get out of the house ride. Let us look at this for a second. I don't know. I feel like it's... Alright, well, let's see if we can make it. I feel like it's the chain rubbing against the... Okay, so what happened in that, you see this part here where the derailleur cable goes around, this is really easy to come out. And if this comes out, I mean, it won't come out when you're riding, but you have to watch for it when you change the wheel. And like I said, you have to re-index the wheel. So this part will come out. And if you don't know this derailleur in particular, you have to follow this thing around here and in through there. And if that comes out, then you'll get the shifting problems. So what probably happened is that got dislodged when my bike fell over. And the way I was shifting probably stressed this joint out more. And then it probably got exacerbated when I crashed again. When I crashed, the first time the bike just fell over, but then when I actually crashed, I think that got bent. It might have gotten bent before, but it's hard to tell. So that's initially what caused the problem. And then that crash, then the derailleur hanger got bent too. So what I was able to do is I realized that this was out. You know, it'll pop out, and I had to re-put it back in, and then I was able to limp home. And then later we were able to get it fixed.